Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights and strategies. So sit back and relax, let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show. I'm Lyn Hawkins, and I'm the National Director and Founder of Business Women Australia. And I'm streaming to you from the Pinjarra people in the Noongar Nation. I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present, and those emerging all around this fabulous nation. I'm really excited to have Tracy Cooper back on the show after her intrepid travels around the world. She's extraordinary. I love following your adventures, Tracy. You really are amazing. You do live by this important message that you give us all the time about taking a pause. How was it?
Hello, Lyn. It was fabulous. It was. I spent a week in Mallorca, in Spain, and then I had for a bit of rest, and then off to Greece. So climbing mountains. We went to the Vikos Gorge, which is in the northwest. It was spectacular. It was amazing, and the weather wasn't too hot there. But once we got sailing in our boat, it was hot, and Athens was hot. But it was active and it was fun, and it was a good. You know, some people say to me, is it really a holiday? It's like the pause is amazing for me. So yeah, it was wonderful. I've been back a bit over a week now, so I'm back into the swing of things. Yeah.
Amazing, because you really are the Action Jackson, and I know that that's the way you fill your cup. Look, after the last few episodes, we've had Tracy on the show, and I realised, you know, as I was listening to so much of what you've shared with us over the years, that it's really important to look at middle managers. That's why we thought this episode, the role of middle managers in change leadership, would be such a good topic and a really important theme. So really, you know, Tracy's one of Australia's most highly regarded change specialists. And I say that hand on heart. I know she would probably be very humble in terms of being described like that, but I've seen how her expertise has really led organisations through the complexities of change from a very human-centred perspective. She's worked extensively with boards, with executives and teams to navigate these complex issues that arise when you're looking at how you can retain and build good aspects of your culture while unlocking performance and taking on the innovations that you need to embrace. You're a coach, a facilitator, a speaker, and you have a passion for supporting women, which is something that we share in terms of helping women in their leadership roles. You'll listen to Tracy. If you haven't met her before, you will see she's got extraordinary warmth and a genuine care for others, but she has with that this extraordinary insight that's come from her experience over many, many years. And we'll delve into a bit of that as we go through. But Tracy, you know, we spoke about the C-suite so often when we discuss change leadership. I mean, we've been on, I think, on quite a few podcasts. We've certainly hosted a lot of our in-person roundtables in Brisbane and online. Why are middle managers such a critical link in making change actually work in organisations?
Well, firstly, Lyn, thank you for that lovely introduction. And I think to add to what you said, for over 25 years, I've been working in change. And what I see, the key to success are middle leaders. Yes, it's really important for the C-suite and the senior leaders to get clear on what the change is and getting a plan, but it's the middle leaders who are the key to success. Because if they resist it, you've got trouble when it comes to your change. So why not support them and pull them in? Because they're in touch. They're in touch with their teams, the employees of the organisation, and they're in touch with the day-to-day operations. I've talked to many middle leaders, Lyn, and often they say to me, if the C-suite had just talked to us a little bit more and gained some of our insight and let us contribute to some of this could have been easier. So they can act as a temperature gauge. They can give feedback around what are the real issues, but also practically how is what is getting proposed with this change, how it's going to work. So that's why they're important, because they're on the ground. I do sort of think that they also feel like they're a meat in the sandwich, because they often, I've heard middle leaders say to me things like, oh no, here we go again. And they can get fatigued by change. So it's really important to engage them. They are on the ground, they know what's happening. So they are full of information, and they can really help the C-suite, really help them, definitely.
Yeah, and it's really, what role do they play? I mean, there's so many different forms of change and transformation that are being embraced, particularly at the moment across every sector and every profession. So what role should they play when change is happening in an organisation?
Well, just what I wanted to add too before I answer that bit, which is I'm a accredited ProSci practitioner, so which is a model, quite a well-known model about implementing change. And from their research, they talk about that people in the organisation prefer to hear about and receive messages and talk to the person they directly report to, which is often a middle leader, not to the C-suite. So that to me is a vital piece of research. Combined with ProSci's research is in levels of organisation, people think that it's the employees that actually resist change the most. It's not. It's actually middle leaders. 43% of middle leaders will resist change. Some senior leaders resist it, but the employees is only 25%. So the role that they play is, I think, such a vital role. They're a conduit, for the want of a better word. They actually act as a channel to be able to communicate messages and listen. So I think one of the key parts, everyone talks about communication. It's not just talking at people and delivering messages. That's one part of it, and delivering it consistently. Listening is such an important role, and that's how we can utilize our middle leaders, is getting those listening skills happening and hearing from their teams what they're thinking, where they're resisting, and so forth. Another role I see middle leaders can play, if we get them on board and support them, they can be an advocate for this change, talking this change up and help it, even though sometimes they may not really totally agree with it. It's giving them the time to digest it before it gets announced to everybody else, so they can contribute. But an advocate, talking it up, not talking it down. And I think they can also help with that resistance. Everyone talks about, people resist change, they don't like it. Well, if your middle leaders are resisting, you don't have much chance, because their teams might resist as well. So it's helping them, support them to think about, how do I understand this and my role initially? What am I supposed to do as a middle leader? But then to help with the resistance with others. And I think one of the other parts of it is coaching along their team, is not just telling, and being a leader who's listening, so well worth listening to and working with. So I think coaching people along is a big part of their role, but we've got to give them a chance to do that.
I'm just, as you're chatting, I'm just thinking about so many different types of change. We've got the sort of the daily changes that go with adapting and being nimble and shifting strategy, and then we've got those big mergers and acquisition environments, or with big complex changes from sort of compliance issues or whatever might be imposed that are really need to be communicated through, rather than being co-designed. So much of what we've been chatting about in Business Women Australia is involving different aspects of the organisation in change, and that's all very well and good in co-design opportunities, but there are so many times when that's just not reality. A change, whether it's an environmental change or a corporate change that's being imposed upon an organisation, and it has to make that shift. There is that sort of middle level managers really are that vital link between that executive shift, that strategic shift, and the new vision as it's being formed, and the operational reality. Now, you talk about self-awareness and the power of the pause. You know, this has come through everything that you do, and it really is quite your signature messaging, and I love it because it's so important at the leadership level. Now, how important is this inner work for middle managers as well? You know, they're often the ones under intense pressure. You know, they are the meat and fish, to be honest. And the inner work, I mean, are they equipped? Are they supported to even do that inner work?
Yeah, and your point just before, Lyn, is really, really valid. There are some changes that there isn't time to co-create. There isn't the resources to co-create. It could be enforced by governments. So, you know, I do want to acknowledge that it can't always be exactly how a change manager might like it. So it's about how do we cope? How do we get through this situation? And I think pausing regularly can help identify where we are at as a senior leader, but as a middle leader, why am I having the challenges? But also I am having some wins. Why am I having that? Because I find, even personally, trying to do that sort of thing on the run can be difficult. And I don't mean pause for days or all day. I'm talking about pause for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, even on a morning walk or at lunchtime, just, whoa, where am I at? And I said it before, but a learning leader is worth following. So when a team can see that a leader is saying, hang on, I'm thinking, and sharing some vulnerabilities, this is where I'm confused, I'm not sure, so forth, that really helps a team to go, okay. Although some people want their leader to be right out the front and help them feel safe, but sometimes they can't be, they don't know. And that can be really, really hard. So I think it's important to do it as an individual leader, but it's also important to have these conversations with teams, to pause regularly. And it might take half an hour to an hour, but it's about, and I use that action learning focus, which is what's been happening, the act. Okay, then let's move down to reflect. Well, with that, what's going well and not going well? Because often we can focus on things that aren't going well, but there are some wins if we look for them. And then from there, well, so what are we learning? And then plan. So do we need to course correct, or do we need to change things? So I think that can help build trust in a team in a very an environment that's tough, in a change environment, and it can help build trust. So if it's not all bells and whistles, but it's about, we've got to get through this as best as we can, and if we stick together, but if we learn together as well, that will be helpful and build trust.
You're really painting quite a fantastic framework there, around change. What is the change, and how is it going to be impacting others? How do I support others? But actually there's another piece of that pie that so often we don't look at, is, how am I going to look after myself during this change?
Yes. Yes.
As you're painting that picture of going for a walk, I was just thinking about a bunch of middle managers I was chatting to recently, general manager kind of roles where they've got their business owners that they're reporting to, they've got their teams under them, and they're eating their lunches at their desks.
Yes.
It's not great. They know it's sending out the wrong messages, but they're feeling this enormous pressure. And it's about, what is it about? Giving permission, but also recognizing that if you don't do it, then you're sending a message to everyone else not to do it either, that it's not okay to go for a walk, to have a break.
Yes, I totally support that, Lyn. I was only coaching someone yesterday, and they were feeling the pinch, and they were talking about, I feel a sense of responsibility to my team because sometimes I don't know where we're going. It's a bit like I was talking about my holiday sailing boats. I'm not sure where this ship is sailing, and there's a responsibility that they feel to their team that they've got to be there. But she was also talking about, I have a responsibility to myself, don't I? And I was just listening to her, and I was asking her some questions. But it was really interesting. I said, yes, you do, because if you run out of fuel, so to speak, and you run out of energy, because change is energy zapping, and she was saying, yeah, I need to look after myself and just regularly pause. I said, yes, you do. And even the coaching session that we're having, I think that this is that right now. And I said, yes, it is. It is, and it's difficult because it's the messages that we send as leaders and middle leaders, people are watching. So, you know, that's, and they watch how we react, and they see that as, well, is that how I should be? Should I not eat my lunch at my desk? What should I do? Or can I have a break? You know?
Yeah. And starting each of our meetings, you know, I've taken quite a few professional firms through large changes, through, you know, whether or not they've ended up, you know, in a acquisition or being acquired, but during preparations, you know, even having a check-in and a grounding before our meetings is actually bringing into daily practices, you know, breathing techniques and micro moments of sort of conscious leadership practices really are being embraced by a lot of corporate enterprise firms now. Once upon a time, you know, that was pretty radical, and the clients I was doing that with sort of 5, 6, 7 years ago, you know, they were pretty out there and early adopters in this work.
Yeah, a simple one can be, just to add to what you're saying, Lyn, is taking some time at the beginning of the meeting is, how's everyone feeling? And they have the opportunity to say, I'm confused, I'm stressed, I'm feeling relieved, whatever it is. And it's creating that safety net that people can feel comfortable to express themselves. Every feeling is valid, you know, but as you say, there can be breathing techniques and we can different things, but it starts to create this environment that it's okay to not be okay and to be able to express that. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important because it's information for leaders and middle leaders particularly to go, because sometimes people's fate isn't exactly how they might be. So it's how do we check in and create that environment that it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable and say that this is really hard.
Do you think it takes courage to do that? I mean, what gets in the way of people embracing what seems to be quite logical, rational moments of the pause? What gets in the way?
I think it could be a few things. It could be trust in the leader themselves. It could be trust in the C-suite. They may trust their middle leader, but not the C-suite. It could be culture of the organisation, and it's because you don't talk about stuff here. I had someone last week say that to me. We don't talk about that sort of stuff because you can't show that you don't seem to be going along okay with something, you know. So it's the culture of the organisation, and this is an interesting part of change and what I see when I coach several middle leaders in the one organisation, helping them align to where we're headed. But it's the overlay of the culture of the organisation as well, the values that we're supposed to be, or we say we're living. Are we living those? And sometimes they can be words on a wall, but are we actually creating? You know, they talk about honesty. You know, honesty is about, well, I'm being honest right now, and I'm not. So it can be a couple of things: lack of trust, culture. Yeah. Have you seen some similar things to that?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, you know, I'm thinking too, it does take courage as a middle level manager to start bringing in these kinds of things, if that's not being the way that we do things around here.
Yes, that's not how we do it. That's not a norm around here. Yeah.
Yeah. And to practice it with your own team and back yourself too, because if you find that you're the team then that's really coping well with the change, people will ask you what it is, and they are processes that you're bringing into play. You know, so look, many middle managers might be promoted because they're technically excellent, and that is often the case. You know, we get into these middle level manager roles because we're generally good at what we do. You know, whether that's we're a lawyer or we're brilliant in the care industry, or we're brilliant, you know, as an IP specialist or a strategist, and we're good at that sort of role. And the next thing we've got a team, and they're building up our team. It's classic. I see it a lot, particularly in the science and engineering space. You know, you've got a scientist or an engineer that's brilliant at design and that research, and the next thing they've got a bunch of people they've got to deal with, and that requires a whole lot of different skills as a middle level manager, caring about your team. What are the capabilities that you see that middle leaders really need to develop when they get into those management roles?
Yeah, I've worked in science in my early career in agriculture, and I worked with leaders who have exactly what you've described. They're very good scientists and researchers, and then they get a team of people. So I think this word communication is a big one. I'm running a communication workshop in a few weeks for an organisation, and it's just like, I've always said this, communication, what does that really mean to you? And it's not just about delivering a message succinctly so someone understands. It's about doing it consistently. But of course, I've talked about it already. It's the other side of it, which is listening to what others have to say. So to be a listener. So it's not about telling all the time. Communication is about creating the environment. I just said it before with the action learning style approach. Once a team starts to get used to that, that's an environment where people may start to then feel over time comfortable to communicate how they're feeling and so forth. And as a middle leader, listening. So communication would be the top one. Curiosity, I think, is really important. To be curious and don't feel that you have all the answers. Again, I was coaching someone a couple of days ago and she said, I don't have all the answers. I actually want my team to contribute so together we can make this happen. So it's being curious and the ability to ask good questions of your team so we can come up with not just getting a decision. It's about how do we come up with something. I think empathy is really important. Walk a mile in their shoes, how this is difficult. It's possibly very hard for the middle leader themselves, let alone, because sometimes these changes are unchosen for them. They're not chosen and they have to look like that this is okay for them, so, but it's showing that empathy to others, to be active and visible, to be around. There's nothing worse, I think, from what I've heard from people over the years, that where are the leaders? Where are the middle leaders? I want to talk to someone, I need some help, and they're not visible, they're not active, they're not around. So, and I suppose the last one would be, I've touched on it already, is be a human. And build trust, show some vulnerability, and be able to translate some of the jargon or the big vision into steps so people can understand it. I think that builds trust. So there's a few for you, Lyn, a few capabilities.
That's a lot for a technical manager to take on. It can be a bit daunting, really, too, can't it?
Yes, it can.
Small steps, small steps that may be a little bit uncomfortable for you, and it isn't woo-woo. It's really, really important to have these. And I think the hardest part for particularly people whose brains are very much around getting to know answers and minimizing risk and researching data and getting evidence-based information together, that not having the answers is there's a level of absolute terror in that.
Yeah.
And let's name it, because if you name it, then it doesn't seem as big, because really being able to say to your team, I don't know, and I can try and find out what the answers are to that, and we may not have them, and there may be a level of not knowing exactly where we're navigating, but together we work out how we can support each other. And learning some of those messages. I know when I was working particularly with accountants, they love to have, sort of like a fact sheet. Here's some of the questions. Let's think of all the questions that we could possibly that our teams are going to ask us, and what are some of the responses that we might have. And they would refer to those fact sheets. And as middle level managers, working across the silos as well and getting together and sharing it with each other, sort of questions are coming up from their teams that really can build out those fact sheets. And they're absolutely wonderful for the leaders driving the change, at the strategic level of the organisation, to see these fact sheets coming together, because they really are exciting, because they're another great way of feeding back up the line what the questions are that people are asking.
Yes.
And it's another, so often, I can remember I saw it first in action when Telstra, was originally Telecom, and because we had a shift from that first deregulation side of things, and I learned so much about change and shifting change, and it wasn't done particularly well, but there were a few things that the comms people started, and it was building out the fact sheets from the bottom up, and I thought that was really cool.
Yes.
And I mean, now you could have something that would be a live dashboard even. It wouldn't take much to create an app for that if you're a big organisation, but just even feeding it through these meetings, regular meetings, I think are important. Do you, Tracy, during change?
Yes, totally. Yeah. And it's because change is a human, what you've been describing there, Lyn, is how do we understand, it's a human game. So the skills that we need to be able to lead change is all about not so much the technical stuff, it molds into it, but it's people stuff. So, when we don't literally understand something, it becomes harder to work with it. So, raising that awareness about why are we doing this? So your fact sheet example is a really good one. People, I think, push through too quick in raising awareness about why this is actually happening, why this change. And like you said before, some of it is not choice of the organisation. It was an enforced change, even by government. But it's like, why is this having to occur? And spending time trying to process that so people can go, okay, I get it. I still feel a bit uneasy about this, but I can see somewhat of the why this is happening. But then, I'm not so foolish to think that there's always people going to go, yay, okay, I've got the awareness and now I'm on board. But slowing it down and getting things like fact sheets and information, simple language, that's where comms teams are really helpful when I've worked in organisations to get the communication about what this is, what is happening when, and keep it coming and keep it consistent, and allowing middle leaders to digest that first before that goes out to everybody, so they are aware of, okay, because project timelines can become everyone just, well, we've got to hurry up because this is actually happening. But people aren't actually understanding this yet. We need to get this clear. So things like communication and fact sheets are very important, and it's repeating stuff. It's said verbally, but it's also written, because there's different learning styles that people need to take in information 6 or 7 times for it to go, okay, I get it.
And you mentioned the importance of that empathy and curious questions, of middle-level managers to ask of your team. Even some examples of the types of curious questions that you could ask of your team. Could be good prompts, for you, some good questions to bring into meetings. I mean, what are the sorts of things that middle-level managers should be asking of their teams during these changes?
I would be asking things like, how are you feeling about this, and then keep digging. But it's like, where are the risks that you see with this? And it's valid that they see risks, and listen to those risks. Where do we need to be cautious? Is there something that we've missed? Can you feed that back to us? So don't jump to, hey, isn't this great? Do you see the benefits of it? Like, tell me those. It's about spending time. And if you wanted to then stretch it a little bit more, you can say things like, do you see opportunity with this? But it's not loaded. It's more so you're digging for information, and they might give you an opportunity. I didn't see that either, that there's an opportunity here. But letting people spend time in explaining the risk, because I think a lot of people, and I've seen it, when a change is introduced, they fear themselves, they fear their job, they feel I've had people say, I've got to shift even where I sit. If they're sitting in an office, I've got to move to somewhere else. I've got to catch, this might sound a little bit trivial for some, but it's important. I've got to catch different buses to work. I've got to get to, it's all these things that impact them, their family life. That's just an example. But it's about allowing people to feel it's okay to say, this is where we need to be careful, or this is where the risk is. And they're the sort of questions I would ask. The other one I'd ask is, what facts do you know about this change, and are there some things that you don't know? Let them tell us. Let them tell you.
Yeah, they're great questions. Absolutely. And this is the time out to think about, what are the questions that I need to be asking my team Because I don't know one organisation who's not going through change right now.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
It's a given. It's a given. Yeah. I just, if you're listening to this and your organisation is not going through any change, please reach out to me. I'd love to know how that is. But look, important messages here for, you know, those driving the change, those in the chief executive roles, the heads of departments, the boards. How do they help these middle level managers? Let's get back to the stars of our show today, the middle level managers.
Yeah.
How do we help them become change ready?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, lead them and be there for them. Don't leave them. I'm a bit of a sports person. Don't pass the ball and just say, go and do it. Because we've just talked about the different skill set that we need. It's difficult and it's lonely and it's hard and it's confusing. So I would say be present for them. Have one-on-ones with them, because they will be providing you, particularly if you're the sponsor or an executive leader of this change, they've got vital information for you that can help you either course correct or to manage or reduce resistance of this change getting through, because a lot of change projects fail because there's too much rush at the beginning. So I think with the C-suite, I think it's about not blaming your middle leaders and helping them feel isolated, utilize them. And because they are such an important part of how this change can succeed, not just for you as the senior leader, but for the team and to help make this happen. So I think it's important to not leave them alone and don't let them feel isolated, is to spend time with them and, you know, have those one-on-ones to hear what they have to say, because they're hearing, and be very clear with them also what you need them to do. That's the other thing I should have said it to start with, is get it clear, and on a week-by-week basis. I've worked in organisations where we actually get it clear, like this week, these are the 3 questions I want you to talk to your team about, what you were talking about before, Lyn. These are the questions. Go and find out that information, and I really want to hear it. You know, so next week, okay, we come back together. This is the next stage. This is what I need your help with. So they are feeling like they are contributing, even though it's tough for them, that they are an asset to the organisation through this process. Definitely.
Yeah, you've just reminded me of some pretty cool things I've seen too, where the executive management team, and now I'm hearing through various of our board advisors, that's actually happening even at the board level, where they're splitting up roles and responsibilities to actually go out and be part of the team meetings and sitting alongside, not from the front, you know, like once upon a time I was thinking about when I worked for a computer company where, you know, the board came and told us what was happening. We were going to be acquired, and they told us how great it was and how wonderful. And those of us who had, you know, share options that was actually going to be a great thing. And those who didn't take up on that, well, bad luck.
Yeah. They'd be talking it up, and you're going, what?
You know, a bunch of resignations that day. I can remember. I'll never forget that day. But compared to seeing where, you know, where we're getting that responsibility, not hiding. And I love that reminder, lead them, don't leave them. So splitting up those roles and responsibilities with those key people, to even mixing it up. So you might have someone who's the head of finance go and meet with the marketing and comms PR team and them, and then the marketing comms head or the lead of that corporate comms might be sitting with the finance team. You know, so that you can buddy up with each other as leaders as well as executive management team members, but sitting amongst them, even where you sit at the table says something different about this, you know, so not necessarily doing a presentation up, but sitting around and having some curious questions as a round table discussion, facilitating, and if they're giving everyone at the table the chance to chat about it. And it really does take away a lot of the fear. And even as an team, you might not know the answers yourself about half the stuff that's coming, and that's okay.
Yeah, because I often say, why do we have teams? It's not just for me to tell the team what to do and they just do it. Oh, well, you can, but it doesn't work that well sometimes, because they've got ideas, they've got some, and the synergy that can be created by coming together and facilitating conversations we might have 2 people, 6, but we might get the outcome for 10 people because we've just worked with each other's thoughts and we can come up with the best solution. So it's not about being that leader who thinks they have to provide all the answers. It's, yes, sometimes we have to be somewhat autocratic, but sometimes it's not. We've got to be actually democratic and actually invite information, because it doesn't mean, those leaders who drop the ego and say, I've got to come up with everything and they've just got to follow. It sometimes doesn't work in change. It's not actually like the building's on fire, although we do have some time commitments here, but it's about how do we involve people, and that reduces what you just said, Lyn, reduces fear, reduces that feeling of isolation, but it builds trust. That's what we're trying to do, builds trust, builds the environment where people feel they have a voice and it's valid to contribute their thinking.
Well, even more optimistically, I'm thinking about how that can actually build so much resilience and feedback loops from,
Yes.
From the customer levels right through the organisations. We start using this change as an opportunity to really engage and empower the voices of people at all levels of the organisation. Then, hello, change is going to be given. And Tracy always talks about this, about how change is not a once in a moment. It's actually, as organisations, we are continuously transforming, adapting. We're tweaking everything so that we're becoming more focused on our customers' needs, on being resilient, on being sustainable, on being good global citizens, whatever it might be that we're evolving continuously to be as the world changes. And these are the mechanisms that really put in place those opportunities. Have a thriving, sustainable ecosystem inside your organisation. This is a great opportunity through change to be able to build those connections and pathways of information to flow upstream.
And find the transferable skills, learnings, relationships that can be transferred to the very next one that's coming, because there'll be possibly 2 or 3 coming at once. But it's a wonderful learning opportunity to go through change, because it doesn't stop. It's what did we learn from this one? And that's back to my power of the pause. What did we learn? And that's often where I start when I work with organisations, particularly the C-suite. And then I get them to pull the middle leaders in. Let's just reflect on the last one. How did that go? What worked? What didn't go so well? What did we learn last time? And what are we going to do this time? Because a lot of times, Lyn, it's transferable. The things that we learn and experience, whilst we're building toolkits for people to experience change, we can actually do the next one slightly better or slightly improved based on the one we did last time. So I always start where you're only as good as your last change. That's what I say.
I always get excited about change when I talk to you. Like, I love how we always start with this sort of cautious view of change, and by the end of it, we're like, "Oh, bring it on!" How can we get more of it? Now, if there's a middle-level manager listening to this podcast and they want to become a change leader, starting, I think I was going to say starting tomorrow, but starting right now.
Right now, this afternoon, yes.
Starting as soon as I get off this podcast, what are the first 2 or 3 practical things that they could start doing?
Yeah, well, I've got a few thoughts here. I think firstly is to seek clarity about what the change itself is. So if you haven't been given the why now, what if we don't, that burning platform type stuff, I know that doesn't fit every change, but just try and put the brakes on a little bit and try and get that understanding and raise your own awareness and be a little bit, I've got to ask some questions. And then part B of that is, well, what do we want us to do as middle leaders? What is the role on a weekly thing or whatever? So some C-suite might go, oh, God, I don't know, you work it out, type thing. But I think it's about getting clarity on the change itself. I think the next thing you can do is try and translate, the jargon and the strategic vision that can seem quite up there, put that into some sort of, and work together as middle leaders. I encourage that, to how this can be in a daily operational sense. What does this mean? Because the words that we use sometimes are confusing for people around us. I would have regular, as a middle leader, then go back to some of this stuff about communication, have regular one-on-ones and ask questions, set those up with each of your team. You could have team gatherings, but I would do one-on-ones because people will tell you more at times, I think, one-on-one. I would say, actually, ask for help. If you're a middle leader and you're struggling, I would ask your C-suite leader for some help. Please, can you help me? Can I have some time with you? Because I don't understand this, or I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Don't feel that you can't ask for help. I mean, I know I just talked about it before. Some of the culture in organisations can be a bit confronting, that you've got to look like you know what you're doing, but ask them for help. But I am a coach. You can also say, can I have some coaching here as about how I can get through this, because it is a different skill set. So ask your C-suite, can I be supported? And that's something that I do, and I think what I do is help the C-suite first get clear about what they're doing and aligning, getting the plan. I can help them do that. But then how do we engage the middle leaders in this? Because they are the foot soldiers that can make this happen. And then I work with those individuals to actually help them align with what the plan is and what we're doing. So they're not running off randomly doing things. It's about coaching them one-on-one. And I think that's where I see the value, is because everyone's different. Every experience is different. So don't be afraid to ask for help from your senior leader, and or say, can I have some coaching in this? Because it's a different skill set to what I am used to doing.
Yeah, I'm just listening to all that, and I'm just thinking of some of the women that are really, really challenged by the changes and feeling that the door isn't always open for them to come and get help.
Yes.
It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to find your voice and to take a risk in change. And it can actually, if you're bringing data and you're bringing good information through and just saying, look, this would be really helpful, and coming from a place of care and compassion for the organisation and the people even at the top, knowing that they're probably going through similar kinds of feelings of,
Yes.
uncertainty to some degree, and worry and anxiety around the change and how it's impacting. It's not about coming through with a mutiny and having all this information in order for someone else to fix it. I really think there's got to be a shift here. And those middle-level managers who do really well in change take a lot of personal responsibility for the process, while still not necessarily knowing what the outcome or the answers might be, and recognising that during change, it is a time of uncertainty, and to be okay with living in a time of uncertainty. And I think this is a big message for any organisation operating today in this world of massive complexity, of massive transformation, in a global world where there's shifts in so much technology and in societal values and in all the things that are impacting on us in our day-to-day lives, at work and outside work. Living with not knowing the answers is going to be a really key skill. And AI isn't going to give you the answers of what we need for the future and to flourish in the future. It's got to be a human, creative, imaginative, co-design future that looks different than the past, I think. So, Look, I'm always excited when I get you on the show, Tracy. You really do bring up so many valuable insights. And today, really delving into that world of the middle manager and how we can support them. There's messages in here for middle-level managers, but there's messages here for those that are supporting them, and for the teams that are actually reporting to middle-level managers, taking responsibility to feed information through so the organisation's better equipped to be and flourish as a result of the change. That benefits everyone. And I have certainly seen extraordinary people through change actually be recognised for certain skills that they may not have been recognised before as well, and benefit from it in terms of playing key roles in the future. I was in a middle-level management role during a massive change at KPMG back in the day, and as a result of my willingness to learn and my openness to trial and to get involved and to take on board what I could, I ended up in a director role helping lead that change. And it was an extraordinary opportunity in my life. And rather than resisting it or being cranky about it, I saw, well, I can't control this decision. The decision's been made. What can I do to learn about it and to make it a good thing for me and my team? That was where I came from. And I think if you go into it with that kind of mindset, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with.
That's good wisdom, Lyn, because there are some things that are out of our control completely. It might be unchosen, as I talked about before, but what can we work with? And it's seeing it as it might sound okay, me sitting here saying this, but seeing it as a learning opportunity for your career. There's so much you can attach to a change experience if you look at it as like the example you gave for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tracy Cooper. For those of you listening, you can reach out to Tracy. You can find her on Tracy Cooper, Change Specialist on LinkedIn. You'll find her on the Business Women Australia directory and on her website. She's always open to a one-on-one conversation, so you can have a chat to her. She coaches organisations one-on-one. She helps organisations design and identify the change management process. She works at the C-suite level, at the management level, at the holistic shift and transformation level. So, and for those of you who are in Queensland, lucky you, that's where she's based, but she travels nationally. So if you're listening to this, Tracy will come to you if you need her. Thank you so much for being back on the show, Tracy. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Lyn. A good conversation as always. So great to be here.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks,
and for those of you who are keen to join Business Women Australia, we'd love to have you. We are across the nation. We are women who are leading across all their professions, industries and sectors. The magic's in the mix. We've got emerging leaders as well, and those who just want to be around thought leaders and specialists and to learn and grow with each other as conscious leaders. We invite you to have a look at businesswomenaustralia.com. We've got various ways of getting involved. You can come along to one of our in-person meetings or online, try us out as you think about joining us and being a part of our national community. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll be back on the show. This is one of the few live streams we do now. We're usually recording and then releasing them, but we did pretty well today, Tracy.
We did indeed.
Oh, yay!
Yay! Well done.
Okay, see you soon.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights to empower you on your journey. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe to stay updated in our latest episodes. And if you're not already a member of Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? Head to our website today and join so that you can connect with a thriving community of inspiring women across Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.